Some people are born with charisma and an innate sense of authority. They walk into a room and everyone listens. We all want to be like them. But what's scary is that some people seem to have this ability but use it for evil. What gives? I'm a social psychologist, and this is my channel. And here we're going to explore the psychology of power. So let's start with this question. Does power corrupt good people, or does it just attract bad people in the first place? Well, the answer might depend on who you are. There's plenty of evidence that power can be corrupting. It's been well documented that having power over other people can make you more narcissistic, more exploitative, and less likely to take other people's perspectives into account. A classic study found that managers who were given more power over their employees became significantly more abusive towards them. Even when we get very small amounts of power, we can become meaner. In one study, researchers had participants read stories about hypothetical students where the main character either did or did not have power over other students. Then they measured how much participants liked those characters. When the character was mean to others, they didn't like him any less. In fact, they actually liked him slightly more. This suggests that we may actually enjoy being powerful, even if it means being a jerk. But other research shows that it's not power itself so much as what it represents. There is a lot of research showing that people who want power are often those who don't have it and feel like they've been overlooked or underappreciated. So perhaps these are the same folks who, once they finally do acquire power, feel justified in being jerks because now it's their turn to be on top. Okay, then what about those who are born with power? Well, according to one prominent theory, it's not power that causes people to be jerks. It's the opposite. According to the idea of the benevolent tyrant, people who are born with power tend to be the ones who are already jerks. They seek out power because it lets them maintain the social dominance they think they deserve. In fact, studies have found that people who score high on measures of everyday morality, things like trustworthiness, fairness, and agreeableness, also score low on measures of social dominance orientation. That is, people who are generally good don't want power over others. This idea also helps us understand why some leaders are able to stay in power for so long. Imagine you're a dictator who's ruled your country for decades. You've had all the power anyone could ask for, but you haven't used it to get rich or abuse your position. Perhaps that's because you were already wealthy and powerful before you took over the country. Maybe you were born into a royal family or something. The point is, it seems that when people who are jerks get access to power, they use it to dominate others. But when those who aren't jerks get access to power, they just use it to stay on top. And there is lots of evidence that those who are born with power tend to use it in ways that maintain their social status. For example, in one study, researchers gave kids a board game that involved making decisions that affected how much money they would earn. Then they measured how much kids wanted to change the rules of the game, and it turned out that the children who were already doing better didn't want to change the rules to benefit themselves, whereas those who were doing worse really wanted to change the rules in their favor. Similarly, in another study, preschoolers played an economic game where they could earn points by collecting sets of tokens. In some conditions, the kids got tokens simply by being in the group. In other conditions, they had to earn their tokens by completing tasks. Unsurprisingly, the kids who had to work harder were really upset when they learned that some of their peers were getting tokens just for being there, and they tried to punish them. Like, they literally wrote, "You should get no tokens" on their papers. And this was true even though the other kids weren't doing anything wrong. They were just lucky. So, yes, it does seem like those who are jerks are more likely to end up powerful, and once they are powerful, they will use it to keep themselves on top. But what about the rest of us? Are we doomed to fail if we're not jerks? Well, fortunately, it doesn't have to be this way. Recent research has shown that power can actually be a teacher. In one study, researchers taught fifth-grade teachers how to teach specific math concepts to their students, and then randomly assigned the teachers to have more or less control over their classrooms. Over the course of the semester, teachers who had more classroom control became more assertive, and eventually they were even teaching the material more effectively. So, no, you don't have to be a benevolent tyrant if you want to have power. You can actually learn how to wield power responsibly. For example, in one experiment, researchers gave kids a board game where they had to work together to make it to the end. At the end of the game, kids were asked to rate how much everyone contributed, and then they were divided into two groups. One group was told that they were evenly matched. The other was told that they weren't. Specifically, they were told that the child who was uncontributing was secretly a spy who was working against them. As you might expect, kids in the second condition didn't like playing with someone who wasn't pulling their weight. But they also felt really empowered. They were angry that someone was trying to sabotage them, and they were determined to figure out who it was. And sure enough, when researchers repeated this over and over again with different kids, it always turned out that the kids were able to figure out who the saboteur was. And what's more, they also felt empowered and proud when they succeeded. They realized that they could take charge and protect themselves from future saboteurs. In other words, our desire for power might not come from a dark place at all. It might just come from our desire to be in control of our lives. And the good news is that it doesn't take much to tap into this desire. In one study, researchers gave participants a survey that asked them to describe their average day, and then they asked them to write down 3 goals they wanted to achieve in the next week. Then they followed up with participants a week later, and it turned out that those who had written down specific goals were more likely to report that their goal had been achieved. It's almost as if writing down goals makes people feel like they're back in control of their lives. And that feeling is what leads to greater achievement. So if you feel like your life is spiraling out of control, try setting some goals. I'll wait. Welcome back. Now, of course, it's important to remember that not all of us are suited to be leaders. Some of us are happy being followers. And research shows that followers play an important role in maintaining the effectiveness of groups. In one simulation of a business, researchers created groups where some participants were told that they were leaders and others were told that they were followers. It turned out that the leaders were good at generating new ideas, but the followers were much better at evaluating them, and these groups were more successful because of it. Ultimately, power is everywhere, and it comes in many forms. Being in charge is just one kind of power, but there are many others. Having status, money, knowledge, and connections also give you power. And the truth is, most of us have at least some of these things. So if we want to make the world a better place, we need to learn how to wield our power wisely, whether we're leaders or followers, the powerful or the powerless. So what should we do? Well, here are 5 tips based on the science. First, be aware of the different faces of power. Power comes in many forms. Money, status, knowledge, and connections can all give you power, not just formal positions of authority. Second, realize that power tends to go to those who know how to use it. Power is often a skill that needs to be learned. If you want more power, you have to learn how to wield the power you currently do have. Third, recognize that power can corrupt. Be aware of the ways that power might be changing you and take steps to counteract them. Spend time with friends and family who will tell you the truth about how you're acting. And fourth, remember that power isn't everything. Having power over other people doesn't necessarily make you happier. You also need to find meaning and connection in your life. Finally, realize that sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. In many situations, doing nothing is the most helpful thing you can do. Doing nothing allows other people to learn and grow. Allowing other people to struggle and fail can help them become more resilient and independent. We hope these tips are helpful, but please remember that not all of us are meant to be powerful. Many of us are happier following than leading. And that's okay too. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.